Okay, I think we can start now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lilian Sestari. I run the SAP practice at Qualex. We're a consulting group with over 25 years of experience in analytics and business intelligence. And that's why today we'll be presenting TrialFire for predictive marketing optimization. This is a rapid deployment solution developed by Qualex based on our experience in the retail industry. We'll have Tom Purvis with us, who will drive the actual webinar. Tom is one of our most senior architects at Qualex with extensive experience not only in retail but also in healthcare and insurance. And before handing over to Tom, please make sure you mute your mic, please, and that you use the chat box for any question you may have, and we'll address it in the Q&A section. So, Tom, I guess you're the presenter now, and you can kick off the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Lillian. This is again Tom Purvis. And the people on the call today from Qualex is Lillian and myself. You should see their names up there now, and make a note to jot down our name and email address if you'd like to contact us afterwards. And as Lillian said, we represent Qualex. So Qualex is a consulting company that's in the data analytics business, and we work in a lot of different vertical markets, including retail, finance, federal government, hospitality, gaming, energy, and others. So we've developed software that we call TrialFire, and I would like to show you that today and discuss it. And before we do, to set up the demo on it, I have just a little bit of information about TrialFire and why we created it. So let's first talk about what were the challenges we had to overcome by creating TrialFire. And those challenges include things like the difficulty in differentiating yourself in the retail industry, and really in a lot of industries. It's starting to be very difficult to differentiate your products and prices from others. Secondly, it's difficult to get customer insight and understanding exactly what the customers want. There's a lot of noise out there in the environment, and trying to get down to what's really happening is hard to do. And that gets directly into a lack of vision into the markets. So we wanted software that would help companies do that and help them be able to monitor their risk. That's an important item in every company to do. And we want to be able to monitor that risk. And all of those things together end up driving a more targeted customer service out there, and being able to find the customers that you want and the products and prices that they like. What we found in our companies are these kinds of challenges. First things we have are things like seasonal merchandise. How can TrialFire help in doing that? Well, you can reduce these markdowns tremendously by 5 to 10% in finding the seasonal merchandise that's the right product at the right time. We also understand that supply chains are much more complex than they used to be, and there's revenue losses there. So we're looking at things like goals of 3 to 5% reduced revenue loss, and logistics costs that go through this in lots of different areas. We found a lot of retailers are trying to be more and more fresh with their products, particularly groceries, but that's also in fashion as well. And we need to get higher inventory accuracy, so there's not as many of those markdowns. So we hope to take on that challenge and be able to reduce those inventory markdowns as much as possible. All of that gets you to the main thing of getting the right product at the right quantity at the right time. And we want to be able to reduce those revenue losses and to get that insight into stock levels. So that's another challenge on here and what we're trying to do. So for doing all of those kinds of challenges that we see our customers having in the marketplaces, we developed TrialFire. So what does it offer? Well, First, it was designed to supplement your existing data warehouse. So this is no product that we're coming in and having to, bring in totally from the beginning and set everything up new. It's designed to come off of your existing data warehouse. It's specifically designed to measure any control change that you can make. And we're going to talk a lot more about measuring and control changes in the next few minutes. We wanted something to be easy to understand so we can understand what a winning store looks like when you test it. We wanted something to be rapidly deployed, and you'll see that we've used SAP HANA in the deployment of this so we can stand it up very quickly. What kind of questions might you have by answering from TrialFire? So we have an idea. Does this idea work? And we're going to talk more about what do we mean by work. Is it a yes-no question, or is it something where we can measure in some detail how much it worked? We have to make an investment in this. So we want to be able to measure that and understand our cost and our revenue from any given decision. How can we tweak it for maximum effectiveness? So we want to be able to take an idea, whether in retail it's a coupon or a store layout or any of the kinds of things you might want to change, and be able to tweak that and measure its effectiveness. And can we target this? So you'll see when we talk through this about location by market, by customer, for maximum impact in here. You'll notice the word maximum here several times. That's what we're trying to do, is maximize the impact of some change. So there's lots of initiatives that we could cover, a lot of things from remodeling to hours of operations. In the demo I'm going to do, we're going to come over here on the very left side in marketing, over here in pricing and promotions, and talk specifically that. But when you're going through this demo, think about other ways you might be able to use it in things like space allocation, segmented merchandising, any of those items that you might want to trial and see what happens. I'm going to take just less than 1 minute to talk about the architecture. And the best part about this architecture is that everything's in one package, if you will. And it's not a highway project that's going to take forever. It is built on native HANA. It includes the database, the application services, and predictive services all in one place. And that one place can be wherever you want it. If you want it in the cloud, if you want it in your location, wherever you'd like, it can be there. And it's in one area. If you already have HANA, then this is a very easy add-on. I mentioned before, it's not here to replace your data warehouse or anything like that. It's just an add-on to what you already have. If you don't have HANA, it's a very cost-effective solution that we'd like to talk to you about in implementing it. So that's all I'm going to talk about in the architecture. I'd like now to go through the 5-step process that the TrialFire application uses. And I'm going to cover these in detail. So right now I just want to cover the fact is that you're going to define a process, you're going to design an experiment, we're going to have a trial. After the trial, we're going to analyze the results out of it, and if it passes, then we're going to go fire and get the results. Let's talk about each one of these in just slightly more detail. In the define stage, let's talk through that for a second. What does that mean? Well, all it means here is we're going to give the trial a name, a hypothesis, and select an experiment or a product. Give you what's coming up here. We're going to look at a particular coupon done in retail, but you can have any sort of trial that you want. Also in TrialFire, you can have multiple trials going on at the same time. So you can create lots of experiments and analyze them. So after we've defined that experiment, we're going to go in and design it. And what do we mean by that? Well, they vary, but what we're going to do is pair up things so that we can look at a controlled experiment and a test side. Now, this is not much different than the way they do drugs, where you have a controlled population and a test trial group that gets the drug, except what we're going to do is make a change. In the particular group that we're talking about today is we're going to select test stores. We're going to be a retail establishment, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And we're going to select some control stores to compare to our test stores and see if our experiment works. So in the design setting, you choose those test stores, the control stores, the periods, and the duration, and then we are off to do the trial. So the next part is in the trial. You're going to previously in that design section put a period to it, and while this is going on, we just sit back and watch. While it's coming in, our data is flowing in every day, and you get to watch whether or not that experiment is working or not. When it's all over, we give you the analytical section. So you have an entire set of charts and tools to do the analysis. Behind the scenes, all the predictive analytics are done for you. So when you're finally done, you know exactly what the outcome of your trial is and whether or not you want to tweak it, experiment, end it, or go forward and flow it out to the entire enterprise. So that's the last section in FIRE. The software itself can do several things in the FIRE section of it, but typically this represents the operational side where you decide what to do and then you roll it out to the organization. So with that portion of it, let me go in and show you exactly what we're talking about. And I'm going to switch over now. And with some hope here, I am going to log in and start a new demo. So this is the actual software. Before I get into it, let me set up a little bit about who I am and what I'm doing. I'm going to pretend to be Lydia Grant, and Lydia is a product manager of a retail fashion industry that has stores all over the U.S. She wants to decide whether or not to run a 25% off coupon for purchases over $300, and she'd like to know whether that's going to work or not. So I'm going to walk through, being Lydia, as to what she might do to set up such a test on this one case. As I mentioned before, I could have as many of these trials going as I'd like for as many experiments. So what we're going to do is set that up to begin with. The very first part of this depends on a view of your data. So before we ever start with anything, we're going to do a view. And you can see that we've defined views into our data in lots of different ways. I'm going to look at one that we've defined as Hispanic customers. So our Hispanic race is just a little bit under 2%. And we've looked at the field type of our stores to be lifetime centers. So these views can be set up and just have various cuts into your data, if you will, segmenting your data in any way you wish. And that's what you're going to do your experiment on, is that view of the data. If we wanted to put all of our data in, we could, but we're going to just create a particular view. And we're going to start now by defining our trial. These are all, as I mentioned, paired experiments. So I'm going to come in here. I am going to name mine Lydia Coupon 25% off. And here is where, if I had a few more minutes, I would define my whole hypothesis that I want to test whether or not for these particular types of stores, this 25% off coupon will really work to bring in more sales. And with that, I'm done with my define. So that's the whole situation I've defined it as. I'm going to refresh it, and now I'm in the design phase. And this is where we're going to come in and select that view that was previously assigned a long time ago. So I'm going to come into my Hispanic customer view, And I want to cluster this data. Now that's important, and I'll show you that in a few moments, but right now I'm going to cluster it by these three things: the age of the customer, the type of center we have, and the climate. And now I'm going to run this cluster. Here's the good news, is that that cluster is done automatically for you. You don't need to know how to cluster data. You don't need to know statistics. You don't need to know anything except a little bit about your data and how you would like to do the cluster. So now that I've set my cluster up, I'm going to do a trial period. Now I'm going to run this one a fairly long time, just because we have the data. But if you wanted to run it as short as a month or a few weeks, you can. And I'm going to start this down here on May the 1st. So now let me talk for just a second about the periods that we talked about. In any sort of a trial, we have three periods that we want to look at. We have the pre-trial period. This is the time before the trial started, where we can look at our test stores and our control stores and see how they compared. Then we have during the experiment, and we've set this up, as I mentioned, for 6 months, and we run this for that time period, and we understand what happens to the differences. But as is often, you want to know what's going to happen after the experiment. You may say, well, yeah, during the time and the coupon's running, sure, we're going to have an increase, but will that increase stay? Will it happen afterwards? So we have a post period, and that's going to be defined as a 1 month period. So now that we've set that portion up, the next thing I have to do is select my test stores. And I'm going to select them. And I want to point out something very important to you as I do. Here are all the possible test stores, and we have pages of them. But you'll notice this thing called center. Well, that center is the center of the cluster that we've developed. So these stores here, in all of these things in center 0, are all clustered together. Now, I could pick several in a cluster, or I don't have to, but I'm going to just pick one out of each cluster. So I'm going to pick store 595. Also, I want to bring up something here. In our test data that we have de-identified any of these stores. We don't want them anything even remotely looking like real data. So the names don't mean much. In the real life situation, you would be looking at the name of the store. You'd know that store and say, yeah, that's the store I want to use. Here, we're just going to go by numbers for this demonstration. You can see that the state it's in, the volume, the size store it is, and obviously these locations will be lifestyle type of retail areas. So now that I'm in, pick that first one out, I'm going to pick one out of group 1 here in 547. And I'm going to come over to page 2 and look in cluster 3 for store 608. And let's see if I want any others. Did I get, oh, I didn't get one in cluster 2, so I'm going to get store 671. So I've picked stores 595, store 547, store 671, and over here in store 608. I could have done many more, but just to get us through today's demo, I'm just going to pick 4. Now I need to pick control stores that map that. Well, you didn't have the math behind here. This would be a very difficult thing to do, to try to figure out which ones are really like stores, and it's really impossible to do without the statistics that we do behind it. Well, we make it very easy. When you select this, these are the stores that match, and you'll see that we also have center here that shows you what groups. So in group 0 here, I'm going to pick 475. That will match back up to 595. I'm going to pick store 60 out of group 1 and store 686 over here. And let's see, did I have any other? 709 here in 3. So I'm going to pick out those groups out here and pick those for control groups. Also, one of the things that we get, so that's what I've picked my 8 total stores, 4 tests, 4 controls. and I can look at my map. So if I wanted to, and we had a few more minutes, I could drill into this, look exactly where they're operating, where they're located, and see how they've paired up. You can see these are all generally in that part of the country, and then I've got two that are further apart. So now I've done the whole, that's all there is to it. Behind all this is a lot of mathematics done automatically to group those together. So I'm going to go up here and save my trial. And now I've done the entire hard part of this. During the trial, I have very little to do except watch what happens and what's going on with things. In doing this sort of items, let me show you what happens. Now, we've cheated because we've looked into the future and we have data all the way out, because we get to do that in demos and we can do this portion of it. In the real world, this data would come in every day. Our little-handed database here would be populated from your transactional data, and you would watch what's happened all the way through the experiment period and then the post period. But what I can see here is exactly what I wanted to know. In the pre-period, our average sales in our control stores, those are the ones in blue, are just about even with the control store. So we had no statistically significant difference between these two. During the experiment period, as you would imagine, if you incented your customers, you're going to have average sales of higher. Now, our margins dipped a little bit, and if we wanted to look at that and more, we can do our analysis. But what we wanted was an increase of sales, and we've got it. Most importantly is in this post period. In the post period, even after that, we've brought in enough repeat traffic. So now in those test stores, we have done what we intended to do. And it shows that, yes, we have brought in more sales. And we can see that our margins are still remaining close enough here that I'm happy with the test. So by watching this, and I can watch it every day until after the end of the post period, I know I'm ready to go. But we give you a lot more information than just the trial side. We give you the analyze period also. So let's go look at analyze now. In analysis, what we have is a whole suite of ability to look at the data and to look at charts. So this is all drop-down charts. You don't have to go out and export this into some other software or whatever. If you can get to the web and you can click a mouse, you can design this. I'm going to do just one easy one here to show you, since you probably don't need to know how to do a pie chart, but just to show you what we're talking about. As my X measure here, we've just defined cost and sales and the number of transactions. I can bring in sales. On my X-axis, I can bring in any number of categorization things that I want. I'm going to see if, let's see if I can find store up here somewhere. I bet it's here somewhere. Don't see it right off the bat, but that's all right. Let me just do store type. And I can show you the store type of control and test and what's happening with my sales. So if I wanted to bring in something else, I can do, let's do store number. And now you can see that I brought in both store number and store type, and I can analyze those together. If I wanted to, I could take store type and just drag it down here and bring it in, so now you can see exactly what happens. You can see these two were obviously paired in the test, and that I'm getting what I needed. So I won't go through all of these, but I will tell you that you have all sorts of column bar charts of whatever you need. You have all of the traditional line charts that you need, all of the traditional pie charts. We have scatter charts, and lastly, heat maps here. I see that I may have a comment on here, just to let me know I have a few minutes left. And so that is pretty much what we need to do. I have run through all the phases. What's left here is my fire. And in fire, again, I don't have to do anything here except roll it out. In this case, I have gotten exactly what I wanted out of my trial. I can go back and watch it through here. And as I get these results, I can see this is exactly what I wanted. So now I can roll out my coupons to a larger area, to all the stores that fit that view, or to the entire enterprise. So that's all I had to say. At that point, I will take a breath, and I want to go back and just summarize here our benefits. In the last part, you see this and why we did these things. It's a data-based decision. We're not using gut feel, and we're not just hoping for the best. It's all based on data, and all of that statistics is done in the background for you. You get quick decisions. We know right after that trial is ended, as soon as the transactions come in, you don't have to spend a lot of time analyzing things. Put your data where you want it. That means if you'd like to put this in the cloud and just have access to it, like I did up here by just getting out to the login, you can do that. If you want it all in your own place, you do it. Again, the access is simply through the web. As you saw, that's about as easy to create as an experiment as you would like. It's going to be easy to explain. You can get down and look at one single score if you wanted to. It's easy to watch it all the way through and know whether it's worth it or not to continue. And it's going to be easy to customize this, so if you want to set up lots of experiments, you can. So just in summary, before you get any questions on anything, it's quick, it's based on facts, you make decisions to make your bottom line impact, you can modify it, tweak it, and do as many as you'd like. Now I'm finished talking. Let me turn it back over to anybody who has any comments, questions.
Thank you,
And we'll go from here.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I guess we got like 4 minutes left in case you guys have any question or comment. If not, you'll see here my email on the screen. You can email me with any comments or any questions that you have. But again, I mean, we have a couple of minutes here to address any question or concern that you may have. Okay, Kevin, what components are you using besides HANA? Within HANA, we're using the Predictive Analytics library. We're also using the SAP Lumira library, which is the one that allows us to use that dashboarding capability at the end of the tool on the analyzing part. And if I'm not wrong, we're using also, well, the Access engine, which is the one that allows us to have the web-based portal available. Any other question? No problem. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna send out an email with the recording session so you guys have access to that. We're going to also publish this recording session to our channel in YouTube, which is Qualex Consulting altogether, so you can find it there. And well, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email Tom and myself, and we'll be glad to assist you. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.